I didn't tell anyone I was moving, not my coworkers, not the few friends who still texted me, not even the landlord of the old place, because I didn't want him to ask questions I couldn't answer. I packed my clothes in silence. I avoided the wardrobe. I kept my back to it the entire time, like it could feel when my eyes landed on it, like it could feel when my attention lingered too long. The last night there, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed and watched the wall where the closet used to look. Wrong, not warped, not broken, just wrong. The second door wasn't visible anymore. But that didn't comfort me, because the absence felt like another kind of presence. Like something had learned it didn't need the door, like it had learned it could follow. So when I found a listing for a room that cost less than a parking ticket, I took it. I didn't even visit first. I saw the photos. Beige walls, a small window, a bed frame that looked too clean, a desk, a cheap lamp, old building, quiet neighborhood, no questions asked. The person who posted it used a single line of text. Move in today, first month cash. No contract, no deposit, no paperwork, just a price that didn't make sense. I should have known, but exhaustion makes you stupid. It makes you grateful for anything that looks like escape. The building was 4 stories, stained concrete, narrow stairwell. The kind of place that still smelled like old cooking oil and damp laundry no matter what time of day you arrived. The landlord met me at the bottom of the stairs. He was thin and pale, wearing slippers like he never expected to go outside. His eyes kept sliding away from my face, like he was trying not to recognize me. He handed me a key without shaking my hand. "It's upstairs," he said. His voice was flat, almost bored. I asked him which room. He paused, just long enough to feel deliberate. "Last one on the 3rd floor," he said. Then, as if remembering something he didn't want to say, he added, "Don't ask about the previous tenant." I didn't respond. I nodded like that rule made sense. Because if you're tired enough, any rule sounds reasonable. Any warning sounds like background noise. I carried my bag up the stairs. The 3rd floor hallway was narrow and dim, even though the lights were on. The bulbs flickered like they were trying to save electricity. The last door on the left had peeling paint and a lock that looked newer than the door itself. And the key was already in it. I froze. My hand hovered near the knob, because I couldn't stop thinking about the last time a door felt wrong, the last time a door waited for me. I forced myself to turn the knob. The room opened into a single space, small but not suffocating. A bed against one wall, a desk against another, a wardrobe near the corner. I stared at the wardrobe longer than I meant to. It wasn't the same one, different color, different shape. But the sight of any wardrobe made my stomach tighten, like my body remembered before my mind could. I walked in. The air smelled clean, not fresh, not like detergent. Clean like nothing had lived there for a long time. I set my bag down. I waited for the feeling, that pressure in the corners, that sense of being measured. But the room felt neutral, almost normal. I told myself that was enough. I told myself I could sleep here. I told myself the effect didn't follow. And for the first hour, I almost believed it. The first night, I lay down fully clothed. Habit. Like sleep was something I needed to defend myself from. The mattress was firmer than my old one. The sheets were cheap and scratchy. I stared at the ceiling and counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3. The room was quiet, not the quiet of safety, the quiet of a place holding its breath. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I remember waking up and not knowing how long I'd been gone. The window was darker. The streetlight outside cast a faint rectangle of yellow across the floor. I blinked slowly, and the first thing I felt wasn't fear. It was weight, a pressure near my legs, like someone had sat down on the bed. My eyes snapped open fully. The bed dipped, subtle but unmistakable. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe for a second. Then the pressure shifted, like a body adjusting its position, like someone making themselves comfortable. My throat tightened. I turned my head, just slightly, toward the edge of the mattress. Nothing. No shadow, no figure, no outline. Just the sheet pulled smooth, the air perfectly empty. But the bed was not empty. The dip remained. A slow, steady indentation like the mattress remembered a shape my eyes refused to see. I swallowed. My mouth was dry. I forced myself to sit up, slowly, as if sudden movement might provoke something. The dip lessened, not vanished, lessened. Like whatever it was had moved too, like it was staying aligned with me. I swung my legs off the bed and stood. The moment my weight left the mattress, the indentation didn't rise. It stayed, deep, as if someone else was still there. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Then I backed away. I didn't turn the lamp on. I didn't want light. Light made things too real, and I couldn't afford real. I stood near the desk, hands clenched, and waited for my heart to stop pounding. And then I heard it. Not from the hallway, not from the building, from inside the room. A soft sound, like fabric moving against fabric, like someone shifting in sleep. I looked at the wardrobe. It was closed, but the handle was slightly angled, as if it had been touched. No, not touched, held, as if a hand had wrapped around it and then let go. I stepped back further until my spine met the wall. I waited for a clock, any clock. But there was no ticking in the room. I had forgotten to bring mine. And my phone was dead, face down on the desk. I didn't charge it, because I didn't want to know the time. Because I knew the time would find me anyway. Somewhere in the building, a pipe groaned. A deep, old sound that traveled through the walls like a sigh. And then, the silence returned. But this time, it felt occupied. Like the room had a second breathing rhythm. Like there was a presence I couldn't locate because it wasn't a person. It was the room itself. Eventually, the indentation on the bed slowly lifted. Not quickly, not naturally. It rose in small increments, like something was standing up in stages. And then the mattress was flat again, as if nothing had happened, as if I had imagined it. But my sheets were colder where the dip had been, and my body wasn't sleepy anymore. It was alert in the way a hunted animal becomes alert. The rest of the night passed without anything else. No sounds, no movement, no flicker of shadow, which was almost worse, because it taught me the room could do it, and then stop. It could show me a hint, and then wait. The second night, I told myself I'd prepared. I changed the sheets. I pushed the bed closer to the wall. I placed my chair against the wardrobe door. Like furniture could guard me. Like weight could stop something that didn't need a body. I lay down again, and I didn't even reach sleep before I felt it. The mattress dipped at my shoulder, like someone had laid down beside me, slow and careful. And this time, I felt warmth. Not human warmth, not comforting. Warmth like a recently used seat, like a place that had been occupied for a long time. I kept my eyes open. I stared straight up. I whispered, without sound. No, not again. Then the floorboards creaked. 1 step, 2 steps, 3, inside the room. But the bed dip didn't change, which meant something was in 2 places at once, or the room was moving itself. My stomach turned. I tasted metal at the back of my throat. And then, very softly, so softly it could have been my own breath, I heard breathing, not from my chest, from near my ear, slow, measured, as if it was practicing, as if it was learning what sleep sounded like. My eyes watered. I didn't blink. And then my phone, still dead on the desk, lit up for half a second. A white flash, like the screen waking, then dark again. And in that brief flash, I saw something that made my skin crawl. A shadow on the wall, not mine. A shadow shaped like someone sitting on my bed, even though there was nothing there. At some point, my brain shut down. Not sleep, more like surrender. Because when I woke again, my neck ached, my mouth tasted stale, and morning light spilled through the window. The bed was flat, the room was normal, but the sheet beside me was wrinkled, like someone had been there all night. In daylight, fear looks ridiculous. It looks like you're overreacting to empty air. So I did what I always do when I'm scared. I tried to make it logical. I searched. I started with the bed. I pulled it away from the wall. The frame scraped the floor with a harsh sound that made me flinch. Under the bed, nothing. Dust, a few hairs. But when I lifted the mattress, my hands froze. There were scratches in the wood beneath it, long, shallow lines, parallel, as if someone had dragged fingernails across it over and over, not once, dozens of times. I ran my finger along one. It was old, but not too old. The wood around it was darker, as if oil from skin had seeped into it. I stepped back. My throat tightened again, that same sensation like the room was pressing inward. I moved to the wall behind the headboard. The wallpaper was slightly loose at the corner. I pinched it, pulled gently, and it peeled back with almost no resistance, like someone had peeled it before and pressed it back into place. Behind it, the wall was covered in faint marks, finger smears, darkened streaks at shoulder height, as if someone had stood there, bracing themselves against the wall, as if they had been pushed or held or kept. I forced myself to keep going. I opened the wardrobe. The inside smelled dry, not musty, dry like paper. It was empty except for a few hangers and something else. At the back panel, near the bottom, carved into the wood, were tally marks, rows of them, 5, 5, 5, then a gap, then more, so many I couldn't count without feeling sick, because tally marks are for time, for days, for waiting. Beneath the tallies, someone had carved words, deep enough to splinter the wood. I didn't leave. I stared at it for a long time, because the handwriting didn't look frantic. It looked careful, like someone wanted it to be readable, like they wanted the next person to understand. I backed away from the wardrobe and leaned against the opposite wall. My hands shook, not violently, just enough to remind me I was human. I tried to tell myself it was a joke, or a crazy tenant, or some kind of prank by the landlord, but the marks were real. And more than that, they felt familiar. Not the words, the feeling behind them, that sense of being watched, not by a creature, but by time itself, by something patient, by something that didn't need to rush because it owned the space. I left the room. I walked down the stairs and out into the street, like fresh air could reset my mind. I bought coffee I didn't want. I sat on a curb and watched people pass. They looked normal. They moved normally. Their shadows matched them. Their reflections in shop windows kept up with their bodies. I envied that. When I came back, I did one thing I hadn't done in a long time. I asked a neighbor, an older woman on the third floor, sweeping her doorway. I nodded politely and said, "Hi, I'm in the last room." Her broom stopped moving. She didn't look at me. She looked at the door behind me. Then she made a small sound, like a click of the tongue. "That room," she said quietly. I asked, "What about it?" She kept sweeping, but slower. "No one stays," she said. I laughed, because laughter is what you do when you want to pretend you're not scared. "I'm staying," I said. She paused again. Then, without looking up, she said, "People say that." I asked if she knew who lived there before. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired, not cruel, just tired in the way you get when you've watched the same thing happen too many times. "I don't know," she said, "because they never moved out." I felt my skin prickle. "What do you mean?" She lowered her voice. "They just stopped being seen." Then she went back to sweeping like the conversation was over. I stood there with my coffee cooling in my hand, and all I could think was, I didn't move in, I replaced. That night, I didn't wait for 3:33. I didn't pretend. I went downstairs. The landlord's door was on the first floor, slightly open, with a TV glowing inside. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. The TV volume dropped suddenly, like someone hit mute. Then the landlord appeared in the doorway. His expression didn't change, like he'd been expecting this. "Yes," he said. I didn't waste time. I said, "Who lived in that room before me?" He stared at me. His eyes flicked, just once, toward the hallway, then back. "I told you," he said. "Don't ask." I stepped closer. My voice was low. "There are tally marks," I said. "There are scratches. Someone wrote—" He cut me off. I know. That single word hit harder than denial would have. Because denial would mean he could still be ignorant, but he wasn't. He knew. I asked, "So why rent it?" He didn't answer. He looked past me like he was watching something behind my shoulder. Then he said quietly, "Because it doesn't stay empty." I felt cold, not from air, from meaning. I said, "What happened to the last tenant?" The landlord sighed, slow, like he was forcing himself to speak. "They stayed," he said. "That's all I can tell you." I said, "Stayed where?" He looked at me, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes. Fear, but not for me, for himself. "For the building," he said. "For the room." He swallowed. Then, as if confessing something he'd carried too long, he said, "People sign contracts and think it matters, but it doesn't. The room decides." I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand a refund, call the police, do something normal. But none of that fit the shape of what I'd been living through. So I asked the only question that mattered. "How many?" The landlord's lips pressed together. He didn't want to answer, but he did. "I stopped counting," he whispered. Then he corrected himself. "I had to stop," I said. "They disappeared?" The landlord shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "Not disappeared." He leaned closer, voice barely audible. "Replaced." My mouth went dry again. I said, "Replaced by what?" He stared at me for a long time. Then he said, "By the next one." I didn't move. He added, almost like an afterthought, "The room is never locked from inside." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" He looked down at his hands, then said, as if quoting something someone once told him, "It means if they wanted to leave, they could." My chest tightened. He wasn't offering comfort. he was suggesting something worse. That people stayed because they couldn't recognize the door as an exit anymore. That they stayed because the room convinced them they belonged there. I asked, "Why are you still here?" He smiled, but it wasn't a smile of happiness. It was a smile of resignation. "Someone is always paying rent," he said. Then he looked at me and added, "And someone is always collecting." He closed the door gently, not slamming, not angry, like he didn't want to disturb the building, like the building might listen. I stood in the hallway for a long time after. Then I went back upstairs, back to my room, back to the place that was too cheap to be safe. And the whole time, one sentence echoed in my mind: it doesn't stay empty. That night, I didn't try to barricade anything. I didn't move furniture. I didn't pretend control. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. My eyes burned. My mind felt thin, like I'd been awake for days, because I had. I listened to the building, pipes, distant TV sounds, a door closing somewhere, normal noises, but beneath them, something else, a kind of quiet that wasn't absence, a quiet that had weight. I must have drifted again, and when my eyes opened, I knew immediately, because the room felt occupied in a new way. The air was warmer near my face. I could smell something faint, not sweat, not perfume, something like old fabric, like clothes that had been worn too long. I didn't move. Then the mattress dipped, slowly, beside me, not at my legs this time, right next to my ribs, like someone was lying down carefully, matching my position, matching my breathing. I tried not to inhale, but my body betrayed me. I breathed in, and at the same time, the other breath came, a half-second late, like an echo practicing being human. A chill crawled up my spine. Then I felt it, not a hand, not fingers, just pressure against my back, like a body pressing gently, testing boundaries. And then, near my ear, a whisper, so soft I almost convinced myself it was my own thought. "You took my room." My eyes stung with tears. I wanted to turn. I wanted to see. But I knew what seeing did. Seeing made it real, and real made it permanent. The whisper came again, closer. "You took my place." I swallowed, throat clicking. I couldn't speak. The pressure against my back increased, not violent, just insistent, like a reminder, like a claim. The lamp on my desk flickered, once, twice. The room brightened just enough for me to see the mirror across from the bed. I hadn't noticed it much since I moved in. A cheap mirror mounted to the wardrobe door. In the dim light, I saw myself, lying on the bed, eyes open, face pale. But something was wrong. My reflection was breathing differently. My chest rose. Then my reflection's chest rose, a moment later, like it was behind, like it was learning. I blinked. My reflection blinked, late. And then my eyes widened in horror, because the reflection smiled, not fully, not wide, just the smallest upward curve at the corner of the mouth. A smile I hadn't made, a smile that didn't belong to my face. The pressure at my back shifted, like the thing beside me was sitting up. The mattress dipped deeper. Then the bed creaked, a sound like an old joint, and the whisper returned, now not at my ear, but behind me, on the other side of the room, as if it could move without crossing distance. "You'll stay longer than I did." The mirror reflection turned its head slightly, toward the corner of the room, toward a space where the light didn't reach, and I followed its gaze, because I couldn't stop myself. In the corner, nothing stood, no shadow man, No figure, just a patch of darkness that looked thicker than the rest. Not darker, thicker, like tar. Like the room had depth there, and the darkness felt like it was watching both versions of me. My reflection moved again. It lifted its hand, slowly, not like a person, like a puppet testing a string. It placed its palm against the mirror glass, and my real hand stayed on the sheet because I wasn't moving. I was barely alive. I was trapped in my own stillness. The reflection's mouth opened, and no sound came from it, but the whisper came anyway from inside my head. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet sentence that felt like truth. The room does not kill, it keeps. I stared at the mirror until my vision tunneled, and then I felt something impossible, a shift in my own body, not physically, conceptually, like a label changing, like a name being erased and rewritten. I wasn't new tenant anymore. I was current occupant. The light flickered once more. The mirror went dark. The room went quiet. But the quiet was no longer empty, because I understood what the landlord meant. Someone is always paying rent. And now, the payment was me. I don't remember falling asleep. I remember waking. Morning, sunlight, birds outside, a normal world beyond the window. And for a moment, I almost believed it had been a dream. Then I saw the bed. The sheet beside me was wrinkled. The pillow had a dent. And there was a faint warmth where no one should have been. I stood up. I walked to the mirror. I looked at myself. This time, the reflection matched. For now. But as I stared, I noticed something small, something that made my stomach sink. A faint line on the inside of the wardrobe door. A new tally mark. Fresh. As if someone had added it last night. As if someone had been counting. As if someone had accepted that the days were continuing. And the worst part wasn't that it meant I was trapped. The worst part was, I couldn't remember if I had made it. The room was cheap because it was already furnished. With me.